All right, everyone, we're gonna get started now. So obviously, as you know, today is all about React and front end. So this is a check-in code. If you haven't checked in already, I'll give you like a couple seconds to check in. All right. So also check those of you in person over here. Please check in to our Google form so we know who's coming. So it would be great if you could. Okay. So today's agenda is basically, we're going to start off by introducing DOM and front end essentially, and then we go into like the specifics of React, and you'll learn more about React with the live coding and your own activities as well. And we end off with talk about props if time remains. Hopefully we will get through them. All right, so what is DOM? DOM essentially stands for the Document Object Model. It is essentially the HTML version of it. So how many of you have ever like gone on a website and done like inspect element or something? Raise your hand if you have. Okay, yeah, so all that is kind of related to DOM. So essentially, that's the HTML code, right? If you do the inspect element, you see HTML version of it. It's basically the interactive part of it. That's essentially DOM. So it's structured as a tree representing all the elements on the web page that you see, like all the components that you see, all the text, all the headings, the titles, and everything. It's just the way to interact with it. Like if you can, you know how you when you do inspect element, you can change the text as well. You can edit it right there. That's the interaction part of it. That's like DOM. You're working with DOM right there when you do that. So essentially over here, we have all this tree right here. You have the document, right? Well, that is a document where you have all your headings and body and titles and everything, which is what we did in our first workshop with HTML, just how like the structure of HTML, right? Like if you remember, we started off by opening up with the HTML tag, and inside the HTML tags, we had the head and the body had the references and links, the attributes and paragraphs, like your text and everything. So that more about it over here now is the root. Okay, how many of you are actually familiar with trees? Okay, not everyone. So essentially trees are kind of like a parent-child relationship with everything. So if you see over here, this like document has like the parent for the root element. The root element is like, which is HTML, right? The very beginning that you have in your HTML code. That is a parent for the head and the body elements, right? Like you have these inside. Is this making sense? If you have any questions, just raise your hand, I'll answer. Okay, so then the head is like the parent of this child. The child is like the title, and the text is the child of title element, and this is like the parent for the text. Similarly, over here, you have the element body type, and that's the parent for the attributes, the elements, and like the heading. And the heading is like the parent for the text that you have inside, like this is my header, the text that you have for that. And similarly for like the attributes, like this link, this whatever you have. And this, the attributes, the element, and like the headings are all like siblings, because the siblings are basically on a tree that are on the same level over there. Okay, any questions? Yes. Yeah, so if you remember in our first workshop about HTML, you use the A like to the reference, right? If you remember how we linked the style sheets. Yeah, so like if you remember how you use like the A tag, right? Which is a reference, an attribute, and then you had the link inside. Yeah, so that's why it's like connected, because the A is an attribute. Okay, cool. Any other questions? Okay, so I'm gonna start with my demo here now. So Nikhil, can you share the code and to them in Discord? Just copy it in, or you can also go on GitHub and just pull it in. I have them over there. So if you go on GitHub, the page that we have for Hacksaw 422, go to part 3 branch, and over here you'll see the demo 1 and demo 2 HTML. Just get it on your VS Code right now, and yeah, you can run it on your own computer as well. So I have it here on VS Code, right? Then what you're gonna do is over here, you're gonna type in the directory for it. You can just get the directory by just right-clicking it and just copying the path and just pasting it in Google over here. And it should give you this. So now what I'm gonna do is do the inspect element. We're gonna learn the mutability of DOM because by interacting with it. I'll give you a minute or two so you can get it on your computers as well.
It's in Discord. Yeah, so I remember running it because that's what I was putting.
Okay. If you have any questions, they're gonna be walking around and helping you out. But I'll keep moving on with this. So for those of you who've got it, okay, actually raise your hand if you have it ready. Okay. Okay, I'll give it like a 1 more minute. Great. All right, so once you get it on GitHub, VS Code, just copy the path of the file. So you have the directory. So just, you have your file, right? You right click and you just click copy path. And then over here on Google or Safari or whatever you have, just open a tab and just paste that in. I didn't copy it, but yeah, just paste it in here. And this is what you should see for demo 1. And then this is demo 2. This is what you should see for demo 2. But let's just stick with demo 1 for now. Yeah. So right click, copy path, and then open it up and paste it in here. Okay, I think most people have it, so I'm gonna do this. Okay, so now what you want to do is right click it and do inspect. So now over here, you see all the HTML code that you already see in VS Code, right? So let's say you want to change what it says for demo. Let's say you want to change it to something like hello world, okay? So what you're gonna do is in the script you can just copy this in from there. It's commented out in your code. So if you go back to VS Code, it's commented out. Just copy that part in, that line in. And now what you're gonna do is go to console and just paste that in there and just run it. So basically what that did is you had the document, right, with all of your HTML code. You're getting the ID demo because you specified demo in the parameters. So over here, it's going to look for ID with where it's demo. And then you want to change it to, you're setting it to a hello world exclamation. So then it changes it from demo to hello world exclamation. Does that make sense to everyone? Yes. Yes, just paste it in there and just run it. Just press enter and it should run. And I can zoom in actually. Can everyone see? Okay, cool. So now there's another thing in there. We have the document.getElement by class name. So now what we're going to do is you're going to put that in the console now. So, and just run it. You change the color, right? So what did that happen? So you have the document, right? Your HTML code, and then you want to get the element by the class name, and you specified para in there. But for classes, both of them are para. So now you're going to index into it. So this is like, this line is the 0 index, and then this line is the first index. Everyone knows about indexes, right? Like pretty common in computer science. Okay, cool. So that's where you're indexing into it. So now you know you want to go into this cat one. So, and then you're changing the color, you're setting this out, you want to change the color to, and you're setting it to blue. So then from black, the meow changed to blue. So yeah. Does that make sense to everyone? Any questions? Okay, cool. So now moving on to demo 2. If you see, open it up, similarly, same thing, just how you opened up demo 1.html. Right click and just copy the path and then just paste it in there. And open up. This is what you should see. Now we're going to do the same thing. Right click and go to inspect. So you see your HTML code in here. So basically what we have in here is all of this. So what is this? We have the same things as before, a demo and a meow. But now we're adding a button to it, which you see over here. So this is a type button. So that's what's clickable. Then you can change the name over here by right here. Like let's say you didn't want it to say click. Let's say you want, I'll just do one, right? So then it's gonna change it. So that part over here where it says click, that's the text that appears on the button itself. And then what we're doing over here inside is to that button, if you click it, you want to get the element ID by cat, right? Which is right here, meow. And you want to change that to red. So this is going to turn red. And then you also want to change this button text itself to red as well. And change it from click or now click one to hey exclamation. So now if I click over here, it turns red. Does that make sense? All right, so what you did right now was basically DOM manipulation. You just interacted with your HTML code and you manipulated stuff. Okay. Does anyone have any questions, by the way, about any of that? Okay, cool. So now moving on to the main thing of our workshop today, React. It was created by Facebook. Well, originally Facebook, which is now Meta, but yeah, it's a sinking ship. But I think this we can say it was the best creation, right, Ferris? Yes. Okay. So what is React? React is basically a framework that that builds the user interfaces. So you know how you go on a website and you have like forms or like text and everything, you can interact with the websites. That's user interface. That's like all the front end. React is all about front end, and React can be split is mainly component based. So you know how you sometimes see like, okay, like a text block, that's a block, that's like one component. Another thing could be like a nav bar, like that would be a component. And then you can also have like things inside, like you know how websites have a bunch of different things. Each of them can be in different components, and the components are independent and reusable, which is a really good thing by React, because if you remember in HTML, you had to copy paste it multiple times, whereas in React, you can just call this component again and again if you want to use it. So it's like much easier to debug, and also if you want to make changes, it's just much more quicker. So I kind of talked about this as well, but why do we use React? It's really widely used, even in industry. Many companies use React as well for their websites and stuff. So that means there are tons of documentations online. So if you ever want to learn more about it, and if you ever get stuck when using it and whatever you have, you can just do a simple Google search and you'll find tons of documentations on how to use React, because it's that widely used. And the main reason why we want to use React is that components can be imported and reused over and over again. Because think of them a bit like, I guess, functions that you can call in other methods as well. You know how you have your typical PAs or any programming things you have, and you want to reuse it. You're not going to copy paste that over and over and over again, right? You're going to just create a method so you can just call it, right? So it's kind of like that. Components can be reused over and over again. And a really nice thing about them is they automatically update, and they only re-render the parts that were changed, which makes it so much faster versus HTML. Because companies don't just have like the small code bases that we have. There will be much larger code bases. So with that, it would get really slow, but with React, it's far faster. Okay, so now moving on to like the main differences between the HTML and the React. So if you remember from our first workshop about HTML, you have your HTML tags over here, and then you have the head where you're linking the style sheet, right? So these are like external components. You have to always link them inside. You're not going to have to link them like this in React, which you'll see in the next slide. And another thing is, these are all, HTML is all tag based, like the head tag, the body tag, and everything. So that you're not really based on tags in React. That will be another difference that you'll see in the next slide. Lastly, third is the syntax for this comments. Okay, how many of you remember the syntax for the comments? Like, honestly, be honest. Are you gonna, if someone asks you like immediately like that, what do you remember? Yeah, because it's not comment. So this is, yeah. So HTML in comments, it's very different from all the other programming languages, but in React, it is similar to the programming languages. And obviously, as I mentioned before, again and again, HTML is not really reused. You have to copy paste it if you want to have the same function again. Versus React is this. So now, remember how you imported the style sheet by linking it in the head? Instead of that, you just have this one line right here to import your style sheet. You're just importing it. You're just importing that file directly over here. And then instead of being tag based, it's component based, which kind of I talked about before. Components can be reused again, so it makes it much more easier. So and lastly, instead of the classes, like the IDs and class, you just have like the class name. So in this example, it's just the fruit carvings, right? One thing about React though is it can return only one DOM element, but it's just so much better anyways because of the reusability and it's less code essentially that you will end up writing because it can be reused. So yeah, now it's your turn. So what you're gonna do is go to VS Code and basically open up the terminal. You're gonna run this line right here. I'll send it in Discord just so you can see. Yeah, everyone has Node.js, right? Yeah, okay, cool. Okay. I put it in the hack school right now. Just run. Okay, so now in here, open up a terminal. And then in here, just paste that command in. Just let it run. So what this is doing is essentially creating your React app afterwards. So yeah, React has a bunch of packages and everything. It's just gonna install all that. So you're gonna end up seeing like public class, a source folder, and node modules. The node modules are something that you're gonna end up basically using by you running it in there. So just like let it run. It can take some time, so don't worry. I'll walk around and if you have any questions. I'll go back to the slide though, so you can see. All right, so yeah.
No, it's for you. Yeah, I looked at the name. Turned it on to me, so you turn. Oh, I got some. Yeah, I need some.
Okay, once it finishes running, it should say like happy hacking at the very end. And inside, you should probably see like the client folder, right? Because the command you ran, it says client right there. That's the name you have. That's what you're naming the folder. So if you change the client to like whatever name you put, that's what the name would be for the folder over here. Anyways, so inside that folder, you should see node modules. Just leave it. You don't have to do anything to it at all. And then you should see a public and a source folder. And these three, git ignore and the package JSON files. So inside public, you should see index.html. And inside source should be pretty much just index.js. Because we created like an empty template just to simplify things down for everyone over here. So now, actually, what we're going to do, we're going to come back to it later. But so before that, before we start our actual coding for our website, I'm just going to cover components. So components are essentially like the blocks of things you see on your websites, right? Like you might see some calendar, like a block of text or something, or you might see the nav bar. That's a component itself. And all the different aspects you see on a website can be put into components. So the way you write components are const, and then whatever name you want it to be, and then this equal, the parentheses, and the arrow function. Where it's like an arrow function. If you remember our JavaScript workshop, you learned about the syntax of it, and this is using JavaScript and the arrow functions inside the JavaScript thing. Because React is like a combination of JavaScript and HTML essentially, and it's called JSX, which you'll see when we make the files. Yeah. And so for the components itself, there are two types, functional and class. So the difference between them is mainly that functional have return statements inside, whereas the class have render. You're gonna use functional today. I don't class I have not used, but it is a different type of component that you could possibly use. Okay, so functional components are essentially, as I mentioned, they follow the JavaScript syntax as you saw over here, and they're written as an arrow function, and they render as a JSX code, which is basically React. That's a combination of JavaScript and HTML. That's essentially it. And it keeps track of the component state with the individual hooks. And hooks are, you can essentially just think of them as getting the state for React. You don't have to worry too much about it though. But essentially just the components make it shorter and much cleaner code. So this is an example that we have. So as you can see, pretty short and simple, right? And you can use this again in a different file to call, like, if you're on a meme song, right? You can use this and call it again. So this is using a thing called props, which we'll cover at the end in detail. But in here, you have the heading. You're going to get the title. This props is just a parameter. You can think of it like a function, right? Because JavaScript is like a function with the parameter as props. You're going to get the title from the parameter, the cover image, and the song link. And you're always going to print the jam to the song with me side. And I'll cover props more in detail at the end, so you understand more about this at the end. But now it's time for the demo. So you have these files, right? So in here, what we're gonna do is, if you see over here in your index file, I'm just gonna import DM Sans, just the font type I'm gonna use. I'll put it in Discord as well for you to copy paste actually. Just like paste that in there. That's it. What it's gonna do is essentially just give you the font style. You can change the link. If you want to use a different font, you can get a link for that and replace that link instead. I'm using DM Sans, but if you want a different one, you could change it as well. So that's all I'm doing in this file. Now what we're gonna do is go in here for the source, and you have this index.js file, right? So what is this? If you, let's say you were to run this, you have to always cd into your folder. So cd into client to run, and then you do npm start, right? So essentially, it's just gonna say like it's gonna be a blank page that just says the React app. But also, if you have any questions, just raise your hand, and people will walk around and help you out. By the way, so that's what you see, right? The React app, because that's all you have in here. You don't have your things that we're gonna have, which is you're gonna have the create purchase, you're gonna have the repurchase, and the nav bar and everything. So I was gonna open up a new one. You don't have this, so I'm just gonna show you what we're gonna end up having today. I put it in Discord, just the link for the font.
That's all they have to copy in.
Yeah, and the index. Yeah, so this is what we're gonna get to today, essentially. This is our repurchase. We have the cards and everything. And then this is the create purchase. So if you remember the components, this would be a component. Then the nav bar would be a component, and then the view purchase would have a component itself. So these are like the components that you see in the website. That's what I was covering in the slides. So now let's make that happen, right? So we'll go in here. What we want to do is in the source file, we want to create some files. We want to create the app.jsx. It's basically a React file. And another file we want to create is app.css, right? You want to style it. You don't, otherwise it's not going to show up as anything, right? So we have app.jsx and we have its styling. So what I'm going to do is, just because of the timings, I'm going to copy paste the code in, and I'll post it in Discord as well for now. So essentially what we're doing for now is this. So what this is you're importing React from React. You always have, whenever you have a React file, you always have to have this line, import React from React. Otherwise, it's not gonna. Okay, I'll give it a minute actually. Yeah, give it. Yeah. Always used for all your projects. That's very important. They're all the ones. Just take it. That's where we're at. All right, so I walked around and pretty much all of you are at this stage. So what this code is essentially you, as I was saying, you always want to import the React for all the React projects, all your React files. So the .jsx is essentially saying, okay, so I want to make a file and this is going to be a React file. So that's the .jsx syntax. So as you had the .html for the HTML files and then the .css for the styling CSS files, right? So similarly for that. So in here, I'm just importing the routes and from React router development stuff, which you will need. Yeah. And basically, we have our component right in here. We have that JavaScript syntax, their function and everything. We're using the functional class type because it's a return statement, right? If you remember the slide about the components with the functional versus class types. So this is a functional type because the return. So in here, we just have routes. So if you ever see over here, right? So this is the route, like the default over here, but this is for repurchase is the default, right? Whereas for create purchase, you have in the link, you have the /create because in here, you're specifying a /create for the create purchase stuff. You're just like routing it using this links to it. Does that make sense? Okay, cool. So that's what we have. And then we're always going to export it because you want to use this component in a different file, right? So in here, if you go on your index.js file in there, in the source code, what you're going to do is just import app. Okay, and then in here, instead of this React app, which you see React app, you saw React app over there, right? Because over here you had the React app as a heading. But now what we're gonna do is use the app as just a HTML tag itself. So the components you have, you can call them in other areas by importing them and then using them as an HTML tag. Is this clear? Okay, cool. So that's what we have. And now we want to have these pages, right? We want to have this view purchase. We want to have this create purchase. So what we're going to do, and we want to have the nav bar as well. So what we're going to do now is create some folders. So inside source, create a folder and call it nav bar. Create another folder inside source and call it view purchase. And a third folder called create purchase. This is just a way to organize your code, your files and everything, essentially. I'll give you half a minute to create the 3 folders.
Yeah, maybe just slow it down.
Yeah. Yes. Don't worry about the error right now because we break that. So you have because yeah, you don't have things working right now exactly. So even if you go over here, it's gonna show you the errors that you have, and that's because you don't have this created yet.
Yeah, so we'll start.
Does anyone have any questions about the code we have so far? You can just raise your hand. Okay, I think pretty much most of you have it ready, so I'm gonna move on. And if you have questions, they're walking around and helping you out, so don't worry about it. Okay, so now what's gonna happen is inside the create purchase, inside all of the folders that we just created, we're gonna create files. Each one, okay, so we're gonna have an index.jsx file and a style.css file. Do the exact same file types, do them in each folder. So in this one as well, just do index.jsx and style.css and navbar. And then lastly in view purchase as well, same two files, index.jsx and the style.css.
So if you want to, everyone.
All right, raise your hand if you have the files ready. Okay, I'll give it another minute. You're just creating these two files, index.jsx and style.css, and each of the folders that we created, the view purchase, the navbar, and the create purchase folders.
No, it's been for this place.
So I just had a question, but feel free to keep working on your stuff. So if you stop, okay, so Andy, you're here. Okay, so this is the default, right? That's gonna be the view purchase that you have, that you see, right, in your route. But then if you wanna go to create purchase, you have that create, that's why. Yeah, but you have to like set up the domain and everything. But we're only focusing on front end today, so we're not touching any of that. Next week. All right. Does everyone have the files ready? Raise your hand if you have it ready, if you have the stage. Okay, we have majority. Thank you, Henry. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna start off by creating the nav bar, right? We wanna have that nav bar that you see. The nav bar is this right here. Where it says finance buddy, you have the name, the view purchase, and the create purchase. So I'm copying it because of the timing, I'm copying it in, but I'll post it on the channel again. Just copy that into your navbars index.jsx file. So I'll give you half a minute to copy that in, but also after that, you want to copy this style in. You already learned about CSS in our previous workshop, so hopefully this is familiar to you. But now I'm just gonna walk through the code, right? Oh, copy that new thing. So all of this, right? The .navbar to .nav links in the style.css file for navbar. Okay, is that clear? Okay, cool. I'll give you half a minute to copy that in though, before I walk over the code. Huh? Oh, like in the let me edit that.
we created. And everything you want to do, whatever and everything you're not. Right. Now we go to connects to the outcome there. That's everything we're so we have a two top there. And after you top, if you're just on like local 3,000.
Okay, I think everyone has the files copied over, so I'll walk through the code. So again, y'all, since it's a React file, right? You want to import React, then you want to import the style sheet that you have right here. So it's in style, right? Now we have this component navbar. So in the navbar, it's a functional component again, because of return, you know, it's a functional component, right? So inside you have the heading as finance buddy, which is going to be right here, finance buddy. That's the heading that you have. Then you have the nav links, right? For view purchase and the create purchase. Because you want these to be links. You don't want this to just be simple text. So that's what's happening over there. You're linking them in there. Any questions on this? Okay, and then you're gonna export it, right? You're gonna call this where you're gonna render it. So if you remember, index.js is importing the app, right? So now in app, what we're gonna do is we're gonna import the navbar. So you just center, like it should probably show up, but you could just type this whole thing out. You wanna import the navbar so you can use it. So then if you run it, you might be able to see it. Actually, you'll probably need to run the command to install the router DOM. So in your directory, make sure you're inside your client folder. And then you're gonna install the React router DOM. And just like let it run. Because otherwise your web page isn't gonna show up anything yet. Okay. So then you can run it, or you should probably already have it running. But now you see that it's saying about the view purchase and create purchase. Before, if you remember the errors, before it told you about the navbar not being there, right? But now you have the navbar, so that error went away. Yes.
That doesn't like solve so now we didn't do that.
So after you've done your navbar, you should see 2 errors still. Before you had the 3 errors, right? So before you had 3 errors where it pointed to the line for navbar, but now it's gone. So now you should still see 2 errors because you haven't done your view purchase or your create purchase. So seeing this error is totally fine for now. Don't worry about that.
What command did you run?
Oh, let me put the command in there. I'll put it in Discord. Let's do it in this one.
Was it np? Was it? Did you do np install? Really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yes. And then elements is figure out how well we have that's the thing. It's going to be hard. So when you if I go to the website,
Okay, so I think pretty much everyone is at this stage and doesn't really have any other questions about the code, so we'll keep moving on. So now we'll cover what did we have in style, right? So in your style, which you imported in here, right? You imported this. So what did we have in style? So in style, for the navbar, we're just like styling the navbar, right? We're just aligning things to the center, having space in between so it doesn't look messy, and we have some padding. Just so it's just a number that Ferris and I found to be good enough so it doesn't look ugly. And we have the gap, and for background we just have it as white. So this is with the padding and the size and everything, and having it center aligned, you have this and the white background. So And then for the nav links, similarly, you just want to have spaces between them, right? Like if you remember, I remember some of you were having some issues with both of these words being together and didn't have that space in between. Well, now you're adding the space in between. That's why there's space between the two words. Okay. Does the CSS styling make sense? Okay, cool. So now let's do our create purchase page. Actually, I don't want All right. So okay, so now you have that in the Discord. Just copy this part in your index.jsx file for create purchase. I'll give you a minute to do that, and then I'll explain the code that I have in there. Also, copy the style thing as well, which I'll give you.
Yeah, so you just hold on to that. So remember I asked you to get so Node is like the hospital or something. I like to think about what so people like made out which whenever you say you're installing that. So yeah, start with it. And you're using
Okay, so just copy the two things I have. So the first thing I sent is for the index.jsx file for create purchase, and the next is for the styling of it. Just copy that, and I'll give everyone a minute or two. And if you have any questions, just raise your hand.
I'm the only one who doesn't
Yeah, I'm very proud. Very. Yeah, no, it's been so. Like most. That's not. There's two marshmallows.
I was gonna do it in GitHub later, but yeah.
I guess you can also tell, oh, well, it's
That's
not,
gonna, yeah. 'Cause of- okay.
just, yeah, try to copy paste it into the game.
Like yes. My first time learning. Make out make it one like it is. Yeah, but it didn't go. And then from there, joined in, wrote the web for that. So hard. The way people launch people always need one. You want to go? Everyone does. Everyone does like. Yeah, but it's a great way to get into like end up doing stuff. Different projects.
Oh. Okay. Yeah, because they're not in this textbook. Okay, I have to, okay, I have to do this. Okay, I think everyone is at this stage now, so I'll walk through the code over here now. So again, what we're doing is importing the React and importing the style sheet that you have for create purchase, right? So you're importing those two things in here. Now you're creating a create purchase component, which is essentially going to be all of this. you're creating this component over here. So you have a button on submit, which you use at the end for the submit button right here. So now this is essentially just HTML, right? Like if you remember our HTML workshop, if you read through it, right? So you have a class name instead of like the class. So first of all, you have the container. So in your style sheet, you're gonna style the container. It's just simple, centering it out and everything. Then over here, you have the create purchase form. You're gonna style that as well. I just messed around with the numbers and these look good, so yeah. And these are just the colors that we're using for that. So if you have any questions, raise your hand about the CSS as well. So, but then inside we have this create purchase, right? The heading. What do you want to call it? Create purchase, right? So this is the heading that will display. That's right here. This line. Then we have this create row class, which you also style right here. Pretty some similar stuff. And then inside that, what do we have inside that? Inside that, we have this thing called name, right? So in our form, we want people to be able to enter the name, like what did they purchase, right? The name of the purchase. And we want to have like this text field, right? So to do that, we have this input, we have the type text because, oh, they're going to type letters, right? Words. So that's type text. So if you go back here, you have the input as type text, and we're just calling it name because that's what we have. And then inside, if you want text to display inside of the box, which is enter name, you have it right here. This is whatever you put inside over here for the placeholder thing, inside the quotations is what's gonna show up inside the text box that you have for it. Does this make sense? Raise your hand if you have any questions at any time, by the way. Okay, so that's your one component for the name, right? That's your label. Now you want to have another thing, the cost. I am skipping some because you will be doing these. So I'm going to cost. So cost, it's gonna be numbers, right? Because it's digits, like cost, like dollar, yeah, like $5 or something like that. Numbers, not necessarily text. So inside the type is type number, and the name we want displayed is the cost. And this is just so it shows up as like decimals because obviously money is decimals, right? So this essentially is does that. So over here, if you go in here, it's gonna go in decimals, right? Any questions on cost? Okay, and then another thing we have is the method. So for method, we have it as a drop down, right? We have these types. We have cash, credit, debit, check, and crypto, because those are the types of methods you can pay from, right? So in here, we have the label method. Inside, we have the options that we want to show up in this drop down menu. So we have the cash, credit, debit, check, and crypto. The way you have it is just literally use the tag option and then set the value to be like the name that you want to be displayed on there over here. So is this clear for method? Okay, by the way, still, if you have any questions, just raise your hand. And then lastly, we have the button, right? Because how else are you gonna submit your thing? You're not gonna be able to log it, right? So to have the button, we have this right here, button type, where we're calling it submit button. And so when you click it, it's gonna submit. This is what this line over here was for, the constant variable for on submit. And so the text we want displayed on the button itself is submit new purchase. So that's what it says on the button itself. It says submit new purchase. So if you type something else over here, it would show up differently over here on the text. And that's it. And then you want to export this, create purchase, so you can use it in app again, so you can see it. If you see create purchase, just import create purchase, right? And so when it renders the pages, you're gonna have the create purchase. So I think if you scroll down now, The only error you should see is for view purchase. So you know how you previously had 2 errors before? Now you only have 1 because you created your view purchase. You imported that in. So it knows it's there. Okay. So any questions? All right. So now it's gonna be your turn. Now what we want you to do is just how I had the name, right? So instead of name, you're gonna have the location, the date, and also okay, so we want you to add these things. So these are type text. This is gonna be type date, right? Because it's date. So we want you to add these 3 things that were not in your code already. So you're just gonna add it right here. And we'll walk around and help you out. So you're coding this part on your own inside the index.js file for create purchase. Any questions on what you need to do? Okay. Okay, so description is basically like over here. It's gonna be type text because you want to say like give a description of what you bought, right? Like or where you bought it from. If you want to like when you're logging your purchases, right? You're not just gonna like, have the name itself because like what are the chances that you'll remember? Oh, I bought blah, blah, oh, where did I buy it from? You're not gonna remember that, right? So you can just add any description you want, like okay, I bought it for this occasion, or I bought it from here, or anything. Any description you want to add when you view your purchases. It's just like a simple description.
So that's thank you. Like now, you want see what you asked.
It's just for like a test. The date, like, I think there's like, I think you might be able to specify like what order you want the date in, but I don't think that's. I don't even think you have to. I think you would just. I think mine is done. So the date should look like. So you just have like your date, date, input. So the input would be one. So the rest of the text. If I do date, so you can say type equal this. So I don't think you know. I think so. I think there might be specify format you want the data in, like you want to see. But I think this is so yeah. So that's just because we're using it. So yeah, we're like bundling it so that they enable running is like and then input is different. Yeah, if you look at the styling, the styles on CSS, the that and we can see that we're accessing the field of class. We're setting the styling so it's no, that's definitely confusing. No.
Wait, did we give them this code? I think they're missing the box folder.
For app.
We?
This is in that thing I created.
Did they opt the CSS for this year?
No.
We should do.
Yeah.
Because
Let me give it out. Okay, so in Discord, I added a code that you just want to put into your app.css. It's just a styling for the app thing. So this basically lets you see all the things you see on the row. You can look over it, and if you have any questions, just raise your hand.
So, yes, you have different semester, and the thing, like, anybody, so we can like, for now,
This might just be like a they're using some other so we're just going we're keeping it nice. Yeah, I'm not using
Okay, how is everyone doing? Okay, are you ready to move on to the next thing? Okay, so. So what you should have is essentially this, right? This is the code I have. So you have your description, which is gonna be type text, and you wanna have the text box say enter description, as you saw right here. Then similarly, location is also type text, name your location, and you wanna inside the text you want it to say enter location. So that's what you have. Then for date is a bit different because instead of type text, we wanted people to be able to put it as like a calendar thing, right? So React has this React has like the recognition for text. It has this thing called date, as I'm sure you guys figured out by now. So for that, you just have the input type as date instead, and just the date instead. It should automatically set it for you, but if you also wanted to show it, I guess you could also do like a placeholder and then do a format of it inside. But yeah. Then for cost, it was already there and method was already there. So, and the button was also there. So any questions on this? Okay, cool. And obviously I gave you the styling for everything, so should be good for that. So now we have our last thing, our view purchase. Okay, so inside our view purchase, I will send it in a minute. Good. Yeah. So now if you can Discord, I put the code for that you should have for view purchase. And Also, I'll put the styling for it now. Okay, so now you have both things. Just copy them respectively inside the files. I'll give you all a minute to copy it in. Okay, does everyone have it ready now? I'll give you half a minute to copy it in.
Oh, what are they? If you're not seeing like the updated versions, make sure your files are saved. Okay, I think everyone has it copy pasted in. So I was gonna walk through the code, right? So again, you're importing the React and the styling at the top, and then we're creating thing. So inside we are creating this purchase data. It's just an array which has a list of, you're gonna add to this, by the way, afterwards, but it just has a list of things that we want to display in here. So I'm adding this in here. So essentially, I have inside the curly braces is one thing. So for each card over here, you're gonna have these curly braces, and inside that, you're gonna have the name. You can set it to anything. You have the description, you have the location, the date, the cost, and the method. You can set these to any values you want, and you'll be expanding on this afterwards. So now for the component, we have our view purchase component, functional type again, return. You're gonna style these in here, which I gave you after I didn't paste it in, but yeah, you have that. So inside over here, we're mapping these things. So map is a function that is in React, and you have the purchase that we defined. So, and then for each index, you want the name, the description, the location, and the date, and the cost and the methods. So that's essentially what you're doing. And then you want to export it and import all of that in here. So now if you go in your index.js file, you want to import all of your things. Not in index, go in app.js. So far we only have navbar imported and create purchase, but now we also want to import the view purchase. So once you import it, your errors should have gone away. So now what I want you all to do is, okay, actually, is there any questions on the code for view purchase at all? Yes. Today we're manually setting them in here because we haven't set up the backend, right? So with backend, you know how for create purchase you would enter your data and then click submit purchase and it should show up for view purchase. But we don't have any backend yet. That will be next workshop. So for now, we're like manually adding these in just so you can see them. So for front end, we're just like manually adding them in. This is what it is. So this purchase data, the array that we have is us manually adding them in to be displayed in here. So I only have one thing right now. So it should only show this part, this one thing in here. Map is a method. If you're searching for React, right? It goes through the array at kind of like a probe, yeah, essentially. It will go through and then add all the things in. Just mapping the purchase data stuff inside. Any other questions on the code we have? Yes. Any other questions? Okay. Now, what we want you to do is go in here and add your own purchases. So you know how for now you only have one thing in there. So essentially, you're just gonna add whatever purchases you want manually inside the purchase data. I'll give you all 5 minutes because of the timing.
And this is my guess is that something
So what you basically
Oh, did you know when you're out? And one So now,
very nice. Thanks.
All right, can I have your attention again? Okay, I walked around and it seems that pretty much everyone got it. And obviously after, it's almost time to end. So before that, I just want to cover components again a little bit briefly, quickly. So over here, as we've seen and talked about, and as you've interacted with components, as you saw in our code, it's just another example about components. So over here, if you saw in every code that we had for JSX files, right, you always exported it so that you can use it in the other files, so you can and you import it, right? So let's say you want to use this food cravings a component, then you would have to have this line to export it, so you can reuse it again. And wherever you want to use it, you have to import it. And then you can just use it as an HTML tag, just as you saw in our code with for app, right? You were importing all the components that you created for navbar, create purchase, and view purchase. And then also in index.js, you imported the app and used it as an HTML tag. Okay, so similar things, just this is just another example. So any questions on components? Okay, no questions on components. I think you're all clear on that. So quiz. What file decides the content displayed on the React app? So these are your options. Raise your hand if you think you have the answer. Yes. Why do you say that? Okay, yes. B or B? Okay, explain your thoughts. Yeah. Okay, I think I may be wrong. Yeah, no, it's fine. Okay. So the options I heard were E and D, because C does not work. That's what I've heard. But it is a trick question. The answer is E, you're right. Because I guess you might be confused with the wording, but the thing is for C is also correct because you're exporting the components, right? So the things you exported, so like you exported the view purchases, right? You exported the create purchase and the nav bars. Those have the content that's going to be displayed. So C is technically also correct. And also, as was mentioned in the chat over here, index and app, obviously index is what is the thing that renders it and shows it, which imports the app. And the app is what imports all the other components, the JS components. So the index has the app, and the app has the files with exporting components. So, and these are the things that have the content that's displayed on your website, right? As you saw with our code that you worked on today. So it is E. Any questions? Okay. Lastly, I just want to quickly cover props. We haven't used them, but they can be pretty helpful and useful to use. So props are basically the parameters, as you saw in our example previously. You can use that to customize your components by inputting them as parameters, like because parameters you can input whatever you want, right? So you can customize it that way. So in this example, we're declaring, you always have to declare the props. So in this case, we have this meme song as a prop, right? And so for that, we have the title, the cover image, and the song link. And over here, this is our component meme song with the input parameter as props. And in here, you want to get the title as a heading. You want to get the cover images as for the image, right? The image source. And you just want to print this text. And right here, you want to link the song. So you're using the attribute right here. Any questions on this? Okay, so over here, this is always going to be there, right? Because you're just printing that text. You're not using props on this. So this is what you get. So over here, if you saw, oh, you have the Careless Whispers, then the cover image for that and the song link. So over here, you have the title, the props of title gives you this title, then you get the cover image. And this is consistent, right? The jam to the song with me, it stays for all of them, all three of them. And lastly, you have the here, which has the link that you that has the props, the links, the song link. And that's actually it for today. Next time we're gonna cover backend, and we will work more on our backend, which Nikhil will do next week, Thursday, same time. But instead of Qualcomm, it's gonna be in Henry Booker upstairs.